Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Into the Shadows podcast. As always, I don't claim to be an authority or an expert on any of the things I discuss. I'm simply sharing my thoughts and ideas based on my own life experiences. In this episode, I am joined by two good friends of mine, and we'll be discussing the relationship between money and happiness. Modern life is very dependent on money. It has influence over where we can live, where we can go, what we can eat, and almost every other facet of the material world. But does it also have power over the intangible aspects of life? That's what we'll be exploring today. So let's just jump right in. Can money buy happiness? What do y'all think?
No.
No? Why not? Can you expand on that?
Well, can it? Momentarily, yes. But if we're talking about happiness for sustainable happiness, then no, it doesn't. Because once the money goes away, once you remove the money, you're back to yourself and you're back to the realities of life. And to maintain or sustain happiness, you have to do something that is not materialistic, not related, not dependent on something like money.
But can't money give you the power to uplift yourself or uplift your family from a certain circumstance that isn't giving you happiness? So if you're living in a rundown place, or the area you grew up in was a bad neighborhood, or whatever the case might be, a little bit of income, a little bit of this, a little bit of that could uplift your circumstance in life. And would an upliftment result in happiness?
Again, momentarily, yes. But even if you are living in a better place and you do have everything that you didn't have before, doesn't mean that it will maintain that happiness, right? Like, who knows? It could just go away right away. So again, what type of happiness are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. What is happiness? What do you think happiness is for you? Like, how would you define it?
That's a great question. I think that each one of us can define happiness for themselves, for ourselves. And I think for me, happiness is being yourself, being comfortable with yourself, being comfortable with the moment, right? Like being comfortable, I guess not comfortable only, but being okay with the situation. And again, it really depends on who you are, but not having to worry about things, not being stressed. Like, what is not happiness? I think opposite of that has to be there, right? Like, you have to think about what causes you not to be happy, and those are the things that takes away happiness. So I would say, I don't know if I'm going away from my point about what is happiness, but it's not having to worry or not having to
So not having to worry is more or less a requirement for happiness. So the moments you feel happy or you felt happy, how did you know you were happy? Like, how can you identify happiness?
I think anytime when you're in a moment of content or a neutral emotion, and anytime there's an inflection on that, whether it's a negative or positive, it's a change to you as you go on about your day. So, for example, with happiness, it's a more positive emotion. But I believe that with happiness, it's something just like any other emotion. It comes and goes, and I think in terms of chasing happiness, it's a mirage. in itself, because something that's kind of not sustainable, happiness, it comes from you being from neutral to possibly, getting something to where you can become happy. And at that point, you're just stuck in a cycle of just kind of desire and, trying to accomplish those goals. So I believe happiness is something that's, it's just an emotion that comes and goes.
Happiness for me is, you know, that feeling when you were a child, like you don't have to worry about anything, you're at ease, you're just laughing, you're enjoying yourself. I think that is happiness. And if we were to talk about money, you don't necessarily have money when you're a child, yet you are happy. There are moments of joy that actually, for most of us adults, our most enjoyable moments were when we're kids, right? We would look back and we wish we had, that roller coaster ride or that trip or whatever it is. Now as adults, we look at those as stressors, but as kids, we are at our most comfortable and natural state.
Joy is a big factor in happiness. So for us to qualify something as being happy, me feeling happy or you feeling happy, there's a certain aspect of joy involved in it. Something that more or less makes us smile, laugh, or even sometimes cry tears of joy, because it's in a sense freeing. When you're happy and you're joyful, like you said earlier, you're free of worry, free of stress, free of this thing, free of that thing, and you're just in the moment, being, taking it in. But then, I guess, with the context of this episode, are there things that money can provide that will put you in that state of joy, will put you in that state of being free from this thing or that thing, free from this worry or that worry? And if money does have the power to put you in that state of joy, even if it's momentarily, if you have enough money, can it put you in 100, 1,000 moments of little joy so that you can qualify that as kind of being a happy life? So can money provide you moments of joy?
I think it can, for sure. But I think it also goes into what type of mindset you have as you're using money as a vessel for joy. I think, if you have I think there's some people who might have money, but even though they can use it, buy stuff, they're still not happy. And that can factor to many different things, such as they grew up with money, so it's nothing new to them, or they're just chasing a high off whatever thing that they buy or whatever trip they're trying to go to. So I think it starts from how you conceptualize money in itself. If money is the sole thing that drives you, and you're chasing something just as something like a paper or just a number in your bank account, I think that's just, you're not chasing anything. But in terms of happiness, I think it can be utilized to have comfort, have food, have shelter that a lot of people might want. But at the same time, you gotta kind of conceptualize it in the proper way.
Going off of what he was talking about, there's certain people who have money and they don't even enjoy it. You can look at like the richest people throughout history, right? Like they've had the castles, they've had the servants, and right, like, did they live a happy life? I think you are getting to the point is like the drive, right? Like, what is, I don't want to go to the conversation or what is your purpose of like life, but like it ultimately comes down to what is your end goal, right? Like what are you trying to achieve, right? So yes, you can have money and you can use it the right way, you can help people, you can help yourself get those moments of joy, but you can also do that without money. Mm-hmm. Right? Like it is attainable if your mindset and your purpose or your drive or whatever you want to call it is set around, right? Like how do I not chase it, but how do I attain those moments? How do I create? Basically, how do you live in the moment so that you can, like you said earlier, get the best of those moments, because they're going to come and go.
Yeah, we keep saying moments, moments of joy, moments of happiness, and you've kind of emphasized it earlier. Joy and happiness are, in a sense, fleeting. So, what I guess we mean by that, or at least how I understand it to mean, is that it's temporary in that it happens now. It can happen tomorrow. It can happen the next day. The duration of it is not infinite. It can span 1 minute, 5 minutes, a day, a year, but eventually that high, that peak of the joy, that peak of the happiness will fade. So, if happiness is fleeting, if joy is fleeting, it's not sustainable, is it a positive thing that we should be aspiring for, we should be chasing in life? Or should we go for something else that will bring us whatever is the equivalent of joy but is more sustainable, if there is such a thing?
For me, it kind of stems from first kind of appreciating what you have currently, and kind of being not only just content, but kind of appreciating that level of content that you have with what you have right now. So if something positive does happen in your life, you kind of take it for a moment and appreciate it, but it's not something that makes or break you. And I think that's being that nimble in terms of how you approach emotions is super crucial, because when you get into a time where it's sad, just like happiness, you're able to kind of separate yourself and kind of know that it's a fleeting emotion. One thing about life is, the good comes with the bad. You can't be happy forever. There'll be time when you're just as sad as how you're just as happy. So to kind of, be in that neutral sense of being content and appreciating every little things I think it's like the first step to kind of find some level of sustained happiness.
Appreciation, I think, is the right word for it. I talked about this a little bit in my book. Happiness is fleeting, like we've all been saying. For me, happiness is not a matter of this amount of money getting me this thing, or me being in a relationship with this person or that person, or going on this trip or that trip. Happiness is in everything that you do on a daily basis. At least for me, it is that way. Appreciating the things I do on a daily basis. Something as simple as what I'm eating for breakfast or what I'm eating for lunch. If it's something that I know tastes good or will kind of bring me joy or make my stomach full, or listening to a joke or listening to music or whatever the case might be, something that I know that I enjoy or will bring me some type of joy, that's happiness in the fullest sense of the word for me. It doesn't have to be something grand, but it's just something that is specific for you, that puts you in this state of euphoria or calmness, or how we defined it earlier, this freeing state, something that puts you out of your own head, out of your own worries, and just for that split second, that split minute, you're just still, you're in that neutral balanced state, and you've got a little bit more positivity in your day, rather than necessarily the stress of life, or the stress of this, or the sadness of this, or the sadness of that. It's just peace. That's at least how I define happiness. And money, it can help with that, but it's not the end goal. The joy of it is the end goal, in my opinion.
The journey, I think, is definitely the goal, the purpose. Well, here's one thing I was actually listening and thinking is, like, money, like, we haven't even stated this because it's so obvious to us, is that money is, man-made, like, you know what I mean? And that's, like, one thing that we didn't even, like, say because it's so obvious, but at the same time, sometimes we forget that it is man-made, right? And we forget this natural thing that we were born with. Like you said, just waking up and going through your day, that's natural. The money, that's created for a different purpose and goal that's outside of our natural, like you said, state of like being.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you bring up. I think you didn't specifically say it, but I think the common theme between money, happiness, sadness, whatever the case might be, is this value. So what value are we ascribing to money? So money has this amount of impact on society, or this amount of impact on your life or my life or his life, because there's a certain weight, there's a certain value that we put on money, similar to the things that bring you joy or happiness. So something that makes me happy probably won't be the same thing that makes you happy or him happy, because it doesn't have the same weight, it doesn't have the same value. The thing that determines whether you can find joy or you can sustain joy is in the amount of value you put on certain things.
So you mentioned appreciation, you mentioned joy. These are the different characteristics. But we didn't say, like, I guess appreciation is recognizing. First, you got to be able to recognize those moments as, like, something outside of, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is, right? Like, you got to recognize it, then you appreciate it. Because once you appreciate it, then it changes your outlook and your mentality. And so when you approach life, you have a more positive outlook.
Yeah, I think one thing about a chase for happiness is you gotta kind of question yourself of why you're chasing that. You know, I feel like a lot of times people might want to chase something for other people, whether that's your parents or your friends or just society in general. People try to chase something that's not for themselves, and there's a hard look you have to do and kind of be critical with yourself and why you're chasing something like money or happiness, and gotta make sure that it's, you know, rings true to you, and it's something that's coming from within yourself.
Yeah, I think chasing is a good word for it, in that what is it you're chasing in life? So if you're chasing money, why are you chasing money? So you have to ask yourself those reflective questions. So at times, if people are chasing money, it's to better themselves and their circumstances in life, so that they have better opportunities than they necessarily had when they were kids, or provide their kids with better opportunities than they had. So that's one reason to, in a sense, chase money. But on the opposite side, if you are wanting to chase happiness, or if you are wanting to live, quote unquote, a happy life, why are you wanting that happy life? And the simple answer to that question is that happiness brings with it positivity. Like we talked about earlier, happiness brings a sense of freedom from stress and worry. And that's as good of a reason to chase happiness than anything. And with that, I'll leave you until next time.